OOP in Delphi. After this tutorial, hopefully you'll have a better understanding of the section, as I know, especially in my school, a lot of kids struggle with this section. But the truth being that this should be the section you're looking forward to in your programming paper, because once you get the initial logic down, it is the easiest to score marks on. I mean, they can change the numbers, they can change the words, but it doesn't help the fact that you keep doing the same process over and over again. And it's a relatively simple process. So what we're going to be focusing on today is that we're not going to be putting the class in the same UI or the same unit as our GUI is. We're going to put it in another unit, because that's what happens in most of the exams. They ask you to do it in a second unit. So what we're going to do is first start off by creating this form. I have a memo here, a button, 4 input boxes. Once you've finished starting with this form, pause the video, do that, and then when you're ready, continue. Okay? Once you're done, you're going to go File, New, Unit. Right? What you now want to do is you want to go Save All. Right? And we want to save this unit as Class U. You'll see why now. Once we save the unit, can you see how the unit now went from being Unit 1 to Class U? This will make a difference shortly. The first thing you want to do once you've got your new unit open is you want to say users. Okay, for you don't have to worry about the system dot part, right? I'm using a later version of Delphi 10.1 or 10.2, and in the later versions of Delphi's, a lot of the implementations, as you can see over here, if I go to here quickly, all use a prefix. I know my school uses Delphi 2010, and in Delphi 2010 there are no prefixes. There are only just these words here. So at school, unless you're using an older version of Delphi, like at school, if you're using 2010 version, then you don't have to worry about the system part. You just have to worry about the utils, right? System utils. This is vital, because your form will not function properly without this. The second thing you want to do before we even start teaching you about object and class programming in Delphi is you want to come to your GUI now unit, and over here you want to go comma class U, because what this is doing is it's saying that your GUI screen is now using information from your class unit. So that's it. That's the linking done. They linked, right? You can now use information from your class unit on your GUI unit. Now, this is the basic declaration of a class. Starts off like this, right? You go type, and then you want to give your class a name. For this demonstration, we're going to be using tPerson, because we're using name, age, gender, and we're going to be creating people. So tPerson is equal to class, right? That is your basic declaration of a class. Now in a class there are two types of data. You have your private data and your public data. Your private data can only be accessed, changed, and mutated by elements on this unit. That means your GUI unit cannot directly change or interact with the private data of your class on this unit. So, what is your private data? Your private data will be stuff like this. Because if we come back to our GUI screen and we look at what we've done, we're asking the user to input a name, a surname, an age, and a gender, right? Class is pretty much a blueprint that you use to create lots of objects. So, what we're going to be doing is in order to create a person, we're going to need just that. Some descriptions or attributes about the person. We're going to need a name, a surname, age, and gender. This is the basic outline of our class. This is the data we're going to use to create our object. So all of the objects that we create from our class, and for those of you who don't know what an object is one rendition of your class. Since your class is kind of like a blueprint that you use to create things. So right here, this blueprint says that we are creating an object with the attributes of name, surname, age, and gender. But now, because they're under private, if we had to leave it like this, and we come back to this form here, I cannot directly access the private data or mention it on this form. It won't allow me to do that. It will give you a memory access violation error. But so how do we get how are we able to interact, manipulate, and change private data from another form? That's why there is what we call public data. Public data of a class is data or functions, generally functions and procedures that are able to be used no matter where. So this form can use all the information of a class under the public session, but not under the private, because this form is not on the same form as the class is declared on, right? So the first thing you want to do when creating your class is that the logic behind the class is that, think of it like this: the private data is your thoughts, right? The public data is your eyes, ears, mouth, just your senses that will allow you in real life to facilitate interaction with the outside world. So what we want to do is, our first thing we want to put out of a class is what we call a constructor. Now our constructor is going to take inputted information and use it to create a class against, and use it to create a T person or a person class or an object of T person against the information we have in private field. So how we do this is we say constructor create. It's generally always create. You can name it whatever you want, but for simplicity I recommend just keeping it as create. So what we want to do is we need a name, right? So in brackets we're going to put name, surname, age, and gender, right? What we've done here is we've now declared a constructor that is going to take a name string, a surname string, an age integer, and a gender string, and it's going to use it to create our object of T person. And as you can see, all the information there lines up with my private data, or my fields in my private data. So just to let you know, because I'm using the free version of it, it has this shortcut disabled, but if you have a legitimate version, or you pay like at school, your school should, like 2010, if you just put your mouse over the constructor name or any function or procedure name and push Control Shift C, it will automatically declare it for you. So what you have to then do is just start writing under your begin and end. So, but for the rest of us that can't do that because we're working on the free version, this is how you now define your constructor, procedures, and functions manually. So it'll be constructor, and then you have to tell the compiler where you're getting this information from, right? You can't just say create. It's going to give you an error. You have to give it its link. And since its parent is the T person class, you will go constructor T person dot create, right there, and it completes it for you. And now look, it shows you that we're getting a name, a surname, an age, and an integer. Now the reason why we are able, I'm going to show you a way that allows us to keep this data that we're entering and give it the same name as the data in the private field, because generally you won't be able to do that because you can't set a variable with the same name equal to another variable with the same name. It's going to give you an error. But we can get around this error by using the self dot prefix. The self dot prefix tells the compiler that you are talking about the private data in your class, right? So self dot name, see, it tells you. So now it knows that self dot name knows I'm talking about the name in the private field and not the name from the inputted data. So we're going self dot name is equal to name from the inputted data. Self dot surname is equal to surname from the inputted data. Self dot age is equal to age from the inputted data, and self dot gender is equal to gender from the inputted data. Now that is the initialization of the construction of your object done. That's it. Nothing more to it. If we just have to look at it now, what we have set up a way to create an object, right? The object has no function, it can just store values, and we can't interact with those values yet, but this is basically it. We've basically set up the blueprint in order to create our class. So let's go over what we learned so far. Private and public data. Private data can only be interacted with, manipulated, changed, read from stuff written on this form or on the form that it was declared in. So if I was working in GUI, I can't directly call or reference private data. Public data I can, however. So I can reference the public data or everything listed under public on this form, but not private. So public data is virtually the pipelines you're going to use to facilitate the interaction between private data, the manipulation, the changing, the reading, all of that, and the user on the GUI form. Okay. So now if we wanted to create our object, we're going to come back to our GUI form and we're going to put this under a global variable because we don't want to destroy it all the time. We want it there pretty much permanently while we're running our program. So let's call it person, and it's going to be a rendition of tPerson. Our class, we say tPerson because what we've done here is we've virtually made our own variable type if you want to make it. Do you know how you can say like string, integer, char, all of that? So we are making a person of type tPerson, which means the person has all these attributes attached to it by default. So now, if we wanted to, we could go to our button, and we could create our object. But first, let's make some local variables: name, surname, gender, can all be strings, and then age, which is an integer. What we want to do is let's get this data from our form quickly and store it in these variables. So we got name is equal to txf name.text. Surname, yeah, that's right. Surname is equal to txf surname.text. And then we got gender is equal to txf gender.text. And then we got age is equal to, now here we have to change, because the user inputs it as a string, we have to convert the data type, otherwise it's going to give us an error. So we have to go string to int, so we're changing the data type from a string to an int, and then we want txf age.text. Okay, so now we input it. Let me just run this to see if we got any errors. Ooh, we got a few errors here. So user system view tools. Oh, oops. It looks like we didn't put the interface declaration up here quickly. Let me just do that. Don't know why it wasn't there. Interface. There we go. That should fix it. Oh, there's another one. There's another interface here though. So if I remove that one, it will fix it. There we go. Sorry about that. But there we go. Yeah. So now if we input our stuff, it's not going to do anything because we haven't really set up any way to see what we're doing. But right now, we can input data, save it as a variable, and now we're going to learn how to construct the object. This is how we're going to construct the object now, is now that we've gotten all our information right, we're now going to go person is equal to tPerson. This is the only time you'll have to use the word tPerson now when you're working with your person variable. It is when you reference the constructor create. And now if you look over here, this is why I use the same name, same input name when I declared it as the private field name back on this unit. Because now look, if you see this little box up here, it tells us what we need to input. Now we need to input a name, which is a string. And look, oh, look over here, we really have one name. Now it's asking us for surname. So we have surname. And now it's asking us for age, we have age. And now it's asking us for gender, and we have gender. And that's our object done. So what we've done here is we've now created our object using the information inputted by the user from the screen, and it is now stored in the private fields of this object. We've created our object of our class blueprint. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how we can interact and actually see, change, and mutate the data in that field. Because right now it's all very good and well that we have data in there, but we're not doing anything with the data at the moment. So this is done through functions and procedures. Functions return a value. So functions are used for our get commands. And since you mostly to use about 3, you have auxiliary methods, getters and setters, right? Getters are functions because functions return a value. So if we're going to use a get command, like we want to get the name in the private field, we will clearly use a function. And then you have setters. Setters mutate or change the current data in the private fields. So that's going to be procedure because we don't particularly need an output. We just need a function done. And then auxiliary is, I'll get into maybe in another video, but that's just like working out the average. Like if this private fields include marks, like working out the average mark and stuff, all of that. So let's get started with our getters first. I'm going to break them down into individual ones before I do a ToString for you, just so you guys can get the initial logic down. So what we want to do is we want to start by defining a function here. Function, and we're going to call it get name. We don't want to put anything in our brackets because we don't want to input anything into this function. We just want to get a value out. So get name and string. Now the reason why we put a string here like this is because we need to tell the compiler what type of data we are returning. Now we're telling the compiler that the function named getName will be returning a string. So let's just put some function into this. Let's put some code into this function now. Like we said, you always have to attach its parent to what it is, otherwise your compiler is going to get confused. So function tperson.getName, and I think last time if we don't put a string here, it's going to give us errors. So function.getName, and we want to go result is equal to self.name. Now if we just quickly test this out before I continue to show you what this does, if we can now go memo output, because that's what I named my memo box, lines dot add, and we can go person dot get name. So now if I had to run my program, just to show you quickly how this works, let me just input some data quickly. 18, gender male. Now if I push go, look, it has my name. It can output my name. So that's how we're getting the information in our private class. That's what I meant about public. See, we could use this function, we could call it from our class even though it was on the same form, because it was under public. And because we defined the function on the same form as our class, it can directly interact with the dots in our private. So it's almost like connecting the dots, kind of. Like your public is pretty much your pipeline that facilitates interaction. Okay. So what I'm just going to quickly write one for all of them before I show you. We move on to setters. So yeah, the logic stays the same. Just yeah. Okay, now that I've defined all of these, oops, I missed a bracket here. All of them are pretty straightforward. The only one that really deviates is the getAge function, because age is not a string, it's an integer. So you want to be returning an integer, otherwise you're going to get some massive data errors and it's just not really worth it. So it's going to be the same as the other ones. You're just going to go function, ooh, I should really capitalize that, sorry. Function, what should we start with? tperson. You can skip past this part of the video if you feel like you understand what's going on. Just remember, you must always put the type of function returning here, or it won't work as well. Even though it's declared up here, you have to tell in here in your declaration as well the type of data it is returning. So here I'll just be result is equal to self.surname. Oops, self.surname. Okay, self.surname, and then we got age and gender to do. So function tperson dot get age integer, and result is equal to self, oops, not result, it's equal to self dot age. And now the last one is going to be gender. So function tperson dot get gender, and again, like, you got to add the data type. I don't know why it's not doing that. And result is equal to self dot gender. Now for those of you that are confused with why I'm using result, in a function, your output, or what you want to output of your function, or your result, well, pretty much your result. So result tells the function that you're done, and that's what it must return. So we're returning a string, so the result is going to be self dot gender, which is a string, for the string under here. So those are our getters. So we can now officially use these functions on our GUI form to get the data from our private field. Towards the end of the video, I'm going to go over the ToString, which combines all of these functions into one. I just wanted to do this first so you guys can get the logic down of declaring functions and just having practice writing them. So what we're now going to move on to is setters. Now setters are different from getters, as setters are going to change the data in the private field. Like let's say you inputted your name wrong, you made a spelling error and you want to change it. We use procedures and not functions for setters because, like I said earlier, but we want to input in procedures. Like I said earlier, procedures don't return an output, and we don't need an output in this case. We only need a set command to be executed. So that's why we're using procedures. Now in procedures, like I said earlier, the input in brackets when you are declaring functions and procedures, the information in the brackets is what you call parameters. It's data that you're passing into said function or procedure. And now because we want to set the name, we need to get a name string. Otherwise we can't really set the name to anything, if you get what I'm coming from. Yeah, it's just logical. So procedure, and then we got tPerson dot set name. Notice here how I don't put on the procedure, how I don't put the colon string here, is because, like I said, procedures don't output a value or return a value. They just do a set amount of, execution of code every time they're called. So what we want to do here is we literally just want to swap, it's like what we did in our constructor. So we're going to have self.name is equal to name. And that's pretty much it. So again, at this point, I know it becomes a bit tedious, but rather let us do it all so you guys have a firm understanding than you guys getting confused at this part and not knowing what to do. So we got procedure. I could actually just start copying and pasting this. Dot tPerson dot set surname, but as you can see, can you tell me the mistake I made? We have our set surname, but we haven't added an input into our brackets, which means we don't have anything to set the surname to. So we can fix this quickly just by putting surname there and string, and then here we can just surname and string. I can't tell you how many errors, small errors like that will throw you off for I don't know how long during your exam. So you must just always be very aware of what you're doing, and yeah, hopefully you don't make errors like that. So what we want to do here, just like we did with the last one, we want to go self dot surname is equal to surname passed in to the parameters of the procedure. Now we're going to do the other two. Let me just do those quickly. Set age, integer, and then procedure set gender. That's the last one, I think. Set gender. So gender is a string. There we go. Okay, now we got all our procedures done, or all our procedures declared. Let's just add the last bit of code onto the back of them. So set age as self dot age is equal to age. Okay, now those are our setters and getters are done. So what we've done here is that we've made functions and procedures that allow the user to change and look at the data in classes. Now what you're going to do is I'm going to move on to the last piece for this video, which is called the ToString. Now the ToString command is very common in exams, especially in practical exams. They love asking it. What ToString is they want you to output all this data but in one function. So like how we broken it up over here in our get functions, how we only outputting one of it, they want you to output it all. But the nice thing about a ToString is you can output it all in a formatted way as well, which means you don't even have to worry about formatting when you're adding the lines to your memo text box. You can literally just add them because all the formatting is done here. So a ToString is going to be a function because we're getting a value or we're returning a value when it's called, and ToString. Right? We're not inputting anything, and it is returning a string. Right. So now what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be doing something a bit different here. We're not going to be directly resulting things. You can do it, but it's going to be very complicated, or like you're going to be prone to making errors. So what I normally do is in this function I make a local variable. You can call it whatever you want, but it needs to be a string, right? And I initiate the string just because sometimes Delphi can be otherwise. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ans is equal to, and then what we want is we want to have name, just a normal inputted name string, like not a predefined, a predefined string like this, plus #9. Now what #9 is #9 is a tab space, so it leaves a space. It's going to leave quite a big space between the word name and whatever comes next. So we're going to go plus #9, and then we're going to go self dot name, right? Plus s line break. Now what s line break means is that when it will once the compiler reaches s line break, it immediately goes to the next line. So the following data that we're now going to put on is not going to be on the same line as name. That's how we can format it so nicely and easily. So now we got surname. Surname plus #9 plus self dot surname plus s line break. Okay, so just like this. So we're just going to continue doing this, but the only thing we have to watch out now is the age one. The age one is what most people will forget. Since age is an integer, we can't directly add it to the string, otherwise it's going to give us an access violation error in our memory, and the program won't compile. So what you want to do first is we want to go int to string so we can change the data type into a string when we're outputting it, and then we go self dot age plus s line break, and then for our last line, ans is equal to, then we got gender plus #9 plus, we don't have to use int string here because gender is already a string, self dot gender, and we don't have to put s line break because that's going to be our last line. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to call on this function just to show you something about this #9 things. Our formatting is going to be a bit off, and that is because certain word lengths take up tab spaces. Oops, that's a lot of things. It's equal to, oops, why did I do that at all? Is equal to nothing. Let me just fix these errors quickly. Self dot age, that was dumb. And 2 more errors to go. What is roads? Another typo. Wow. Results is equal to, and there we go. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you why I'm saying there's going to be something off with our formatting. It's because that one word surname, if you can look at it, is quite a bit longer than the other ones. So when we output it, oh oops, did I call it on properly? Yes. Did I result it? No, I didn't result it. That's why. Okay. Result is equal to ans. That's vitally important. You see what I just did there was, even though I'd done all of it, I forgot to result ans, which means even though you've done all the work, you're not going to get the result because you didn't result it. So again, sorry about this. Arvin, Von Staden, age 18, and gender male. Now if we output it, that's hella wrong. Very, very wrong. Wow. Yeah. My bad. Let me just look here quickly. ToString. Let's see what this ToString is doing. Oh, yeah. I don't know why I'm making so many mistakes towards the end of this video here. I'm so sorry. Okay. What you're going to do here is what I've done is I've forgotten to put ans plus. You have to carry your variable down the entire way while working with the string line. Otherwise, like you saw there, it's just going to take what you did last in the string. So that, like what I did, it only outputted my gender line because I didn't carry the answer down. You don't have to carry down the answer for the first one. You can if you want to, but it's pointless. So now that we actually got this thing working, I can now finally show you what I mean about my formatting issue. Okay, now look, if we see our formatting issue, can you see how this is so much more to the right than everything else? And that's because of the surname. The surname is taking up the tab space. It's taking up more spaces in the tab space. So you have to move it more right. So to do that, you got to add an extra onto all of these here. You're going to have to add an extra tab space. #9, but not on surname, #9, and on this one here, #9. That way, when you output it, they will all be in line. So if we had to run this program again and just input the information, yeah, it should actually work now, and the formatting should work. See there, now everything's neat and everything's in the same line. You need to watch stuff like that with depending on the length of your words, otherwise it will mess up your formatting. And that's basically classes, guys. So if you have any questions, just leave me a message.